Hello, and welcome to the MuseScore Café for today, November 7th, 2018. I think I have the date right. I always forget to check, but we know what day it is. The topic that I've chosen to talk about today is the Google Summer of Code, which is it's a great program that Google sponsors. And Google sponsors this, and what I mean by this is they put up money to basically pay college students to work on open source software. It's a very competitive program, and so students have to apply to the program, and then they have to submit proposals to the various different organizations for what kind of work they want to do, and it's a very detailed proposal of saying this is the feature I think I want to implement or the thing that I want to do, and then MuseScore gets I don't remember how many, maybe 30 different proposals, and we sort of go through and select the ones we think are most useful or most likely to work out for us. And then Google kind of has their process where they make a final selection of which projects to accept. And then in the bottom line is we have these students who come and work on MuseScore implementing features for us, and they get paid by Google, and they're mentored by people on the MuseScore team. So I've been a mentor for this program like 3 different times. I've had multiple students, so I've had maybe 5 or 6 different students that I've had with this. So hi Marcus. The program has been really useful for both just open source software in general, promoting the idea that you can do good by contributing to open source program and get some money for it through Google, but also hopefully get excited about it. And it really works well for MuseScore because we've gotten some really nice features out of this. Like in the past, like some of the ones that I had projects that I had mentored involved accessibility, making MuseScore more usable for blind musicians, and some other let's see, the idea of swing playback. That was also one of my students who implemented that in a previous year. A number of other features, a lot of the playback improvements we've seen over the years have come from projects in Google Summer of Code. And this year, this year we had 3 students, and Animesh is one of them, and his project I won't be able to demonstrate because it wasn't so much adding code to MuseScore in the sense of a feature, but I do want to talk about it briefly before I forget. He implemented some things to allow us to collect information about scores in a way that can be used by Autoverus, Autoverus is another open source program that is used to read a PDF file and convert it to music XML so it can be imported into MuseScore. So if you ever go to File, Import PDF, this is actually not a feature in MuseScore. It's actually going to this separate program called Autoverus, and Autoverus attempts to look at your PDF and convert it to music XML so it can be imported directly into MuseScore. So Animesh's project really involved working on that integration to improve Autoverus's capabilities by learning a little more about how scores might look. So I don't have anything specific to show as far as his project, but the 2 projects that I can show were Dmitry, who did some work on a score comparison tool, and also changing the file format to make that more viable. I'll talk about that some. And then also Joshua, who was the student that I was mentoring, who did some things having to do with I guess usability, in particular, making MuseScore more learnable for beginners, and I'll show you a couple different things that he did. But let me talk about the score comparison tool first. So if you've been following these cafes, you might recognize this that I put together at Café a couple months ago, and this was like a cheat sheet you could use to have chord voicings for various different chords. And that you could then copy and paste into your own score, so you could have, chord symbols basically play back without having to enter the chords yourself. You still have to copy and paste them from here. So I'm going to do a score comparison here. Now, one thing I have to confess, I don't know what's going to happen. There is a bug we just noticed when you import a score from MuseScore 2. If it's got more than one staff and then you save it in MuseScore 3 format, you end up with these extra clefs. So that's a bug that needs to be fixed in MuseScore 3. Oh, I should mention, all this work that we're going to be looking at today, this is stuff that is going to be in MuseScore 3. And it's already present if you download a nightly build so that you can test it for yourself. So none of this is, what I'm going to show you today is part of the current version of MuseScore 2.3.2, but it's going to be part of MuseScore 3, and you can already experiment with it, with the nightly builds. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I want to do here is I want to delete this extra clef because it was placed there by a bug, and I'm not actually sure what's going on with that, but I want to do that. And I'm also going to then just make some changes to this. I'm just going to pick some change to make. So I'm just scrolling and looking for something that looks fun to change. Okay, so here's the thing. My voicing for the E chords is placed here, partially above middle C, partially below. For the F chord, it's placed quite a bit lower. I'm just going to move that note up an octave and move this note up an octave. There we go. So that maybe I've decided, actually let me just do them both at once. So for this particular voicing, maybe I want the voicing to be here. And I'm now going to save this as a separate version. I'm going to save a version of this. And this is the MuseScore 3 version, so I'll just put a 3 here. All right, so let's say that now later on, I'm looking at this score, and I remember I've got another version of it, but I can't remember what's different about them. So let me go ahead and load my original version again. And I've got my original version. Because they're the same, are they overwriting each other? Okay, here we go. So I've got my original version and my changed version. And I'm wondering, well, what's different about these? I can't remember what I actually changed. Well, let's ask the score comparison tool. We're going to go to View, Score Comparison Tool. And we get the two different choices here for the whatever scores are currently loaded will show up here. So I'm going to choose score 1 as the original version. I'm making sure I get that right. Score 1 is the original version. Score 2 is the version that I saved with a 3 on it, and I'm just going to press compare. And when I press compare, what you'll see is now we have the split screen view, which, by the way, is something that maybe not a lot of people knew about. This is already present. This is not new. It's under the View menu, View, Document Side by Side. There's also Stacked. That makes them show one above each other. So it's now showing me all the differences. And check this out. If I go to Removed Element Clef, when I double-click on it, it actually highlights the clef that was removed. And here's the other one that was removed. And then when I double click on this one, note property pitch changed from E flat to B flat. So if I double click on this, you can see right here, it's moved the screen, both views, to that point and shows me here's the E flat, there's the B flat. And so it is showing me that the notes were changed. Now, really, of course, we know what I actually did was raise this E flat an octave, but that information, the information about which note is which, is not actually part of the file. All it knows is that this is a chord of 4 notes, this is a chord of 4 notes, and 2 of those notes are the same, the B flat and the D, but 2 of the notes are different. This E flat and G here, and this E flat there and G there. So anyhow, it's actually going through the notes top down and deciding, oh, the top note is different, the second to top note is different, the third to top note is different, the bottom note is different. So it's actually going to show all the notes as different because of that. But there it is. So I can just click on each of the notes in turn, and it will show me that they've all changed in that way. If you want to see that it would actually do the right thing if only one note changed, let's go ahead and do that. Let's just change one note here. I'm going to change this note here to a D flat. And now I'm going to do the comparison again. And if I do this, I should see a difference right here in measure 114, and it's only that note. It's the D that changed to D flat. And so it also, it also points out that there's an accidental that was added here, because there is an accidental that was added. When I changed this to D flat, this one became a D natural. So the score comparison tool will show you basically all the differences between two scores, and will be very useful if you're trying to if you've got multiple versions of a score and you're wondering, wow, what did I change from this one to that? Now, I have multiple versions of scores all the time because I'm arranging things for different kinds of ensembles, and so I expect that I will be a user of this particular tool. There's also an option that I see here that, to be honest, I haven't tried yet, but I'm going to. So I'm going to say I want to compare Chord Voicings version 3 against Chord Voicings version 3, but I want to go the last saved version against the current version. In other words, what have I changed since I last saved it? If I'm remembering correctly, the only thing I've changed since I last saved it was the D flat. So I'm hoping that when I press compare, that's what I'm going to see. And sure enough, that is exactly what I see. So this, even if you don't have two scores open, if you just have one score open and you've made some edits and now can't remember what you've changed since you last saved the score, this will show you that. So it's showing me now that the D flat and the accidental are what I've changed. So that is what the score comparison tool does. In order for this to have worked, it actually requires some changes to the file format, because otherwise a small change could have a big ripple effect. Like, for instance, if I were to insert a measure in this score, then all the measure numbers from there on would be off by 1, and that would make everything look like it had changed. At least it used to. Because of the changes in the file format, that is no longer the case. That the measure, if you just inserted a measure, it won't show everything as having changed. The way the score is saved now, the measure numbers won't throw off everything like that. So that's if those of you who are programmers and are used to using a system like Git, which is what we use in MuseScore to kind of keep track of different versions of the MuseScore source code, or maybe you're used to other programs that do that, or other systems that do that, that kind of the changes that Dimitri made also will make that a little friendlier, so that you can save if you want to keep track of all the different versions of your score and you're a programmer and you like dealing with tools like Git, then you will be able to use Git to keep track of the different versions of your score, and it will only have to store what changed from one to the other, and it'll one version to the next, and it will be possible to get a log of the changes and so forth. That's really something only a programmer could love, but as a programmer myself, I love it. So that's the basic gist of the score comparison tool. That was work that Dimitri did as part of the Summer of Code, and it's been merged in, so you can try it out for yourself in any of the nightly builds. The other project that I want to show you here was the project that Joshua did, and for this one, I'm going to actually do a revert to factory settings here so that we get a clean, fresh start. So let me get rid of those changes. And because to get a clean, fresh start here, we're going to get to see some things that you will see the first time you start MuseScore. So first of all, this startup wizard, this was actually, if I'm not mistaken, added last year's Google Summer of Code. I could be wrong about that, but I think that might have been the case. And so this is a startup wizard that just allows you to choose like what language you want to use, what your keyboard layout is, so that we can customize some shortcuts, and whether you want to use the basic or advanced workspace. The thing that's new here are these tours, and this is what we're currently calling them. And we're going to say, yes, we want to see the tours, and now you'll get to see what these tours are. These tours are designed to help beginners learn MuseScore. When I say beginners, I mean people who aren't already familiar with the interface. By the way, here's a nice listing for my online course, which if you haven't already checked out, I definitely recommend doing so. You will also see this, and you probably have already, just starting MuseScore 2. So here's the first tour. It's basically a little dialogue that just gives you some help on things. So the first tour that shows up is not, and by the way, the actual dialogues that show up, the actual text in them, these are kind of placeholders. We're still going to go through and really fine tune what the content of these tours is. So think of these kind of as placeholders, and don't stress if you think there's too many of them or not enough, or they're in the wrong places or whatever. This is all subject to change. But so right now you just get to see that, okay, I'm going to get some help. That's nice. And then you hit next, and you'll see it's telling you some more stuff about tours. You have the option of just turning them off if you're an experienced user. Then you can just say, no, I'm not going to want to see them. But, you know, there's enough new features in MuseScore 3 that we want to be able to add tours for the new features. So I'm hoping that, we're hoping that beginners will watch them, but, you know, they will have that option. We're going to add them to the help menu also so that you can access them later. Even if you turn them off, you'll have the ability to get back to them. So yeah, we want to do some more things to expose these tours. In fact, I want to do a lot of things to make it easier to get help using MuseScore. That's really my main push between now and when we release MuseScore 3, is going to be to do everything I can to make it easier to learn. So improving the help that's available, improving the ability to find the help that's available, just basically everything having to do with helping people learn to use MuseScore. That's my main job as the Director of Education. So the next thing that shows up here is the score is just telling you that this is the score view in which you can do things. And I don't know that we're going to keep all of these on startup. It feels like maybe this is a bit much to me, but we'll see what kind of feedback we get. And now it's telling us about the toolbars, which is also something. It's just showing you when you first start the program. And by the way, it shows you when you first start them, but then it remembers that you've seen them before, and then it won't show them to you again. Which is, I guess, the way these things typically work in other programs as well. And now it's telling me about the file operations toolbar, and now it's telling me about the playback toolbar. And then the note entry toolbar specifically, where you can enter notes. So it's actually showing me quite a lot about the interface before I do a thing. And now the palettes, so that you can see that this is where you will add different symbols to your score. That's the end of the startup tour, and now you're told that that's the case and given a little more information. So those are the startup tours. Now that in itself is, you know, potentially useful, but let's go a little further now. Let's say we're getting ready to say, all right, I think I'm ready to start doing something. Let me try pressing this N button to try to enter some notes. So actually, what if I just click here? Does it do anything? No. See, I don't remember where the tours are and where they're not. As soon as I click N, now it is going to give me a tour specifically about node input. So can I bring back the tours at any time? So this is something that I want. I don't think there's a reset option right now in the help menu. There's revert to factory settings, which will start all over and reset everything else. But no, I want to add an menu to the help, an item to the help menu that basically just says reset tours. So yeah, that is yet to come, but that is not there right now. So this is showing me the node input toolbar again, but now it's telling me more specifically how to enter notes now that I've actually tried to enter a note. So it tells me to click the node input icon, which of course I already did. And now it's telling me select a duration, and then it's telling me to select if I want to enter a rest, how to do that, how to do accidentals, how to change voices. So this might be a little too much information for right up front, but the point is it's possible to do these things. And it's very easy to customize these tours. So we hope to get, some input on these, and then just go ahead and we'll customize when and where they show up. So now I've got some information on entering notes, and I can start entering some notes. And now, what if I'm interested in doing something in the palette? I already got a tour telling me that there's palettes over here. Let's say I think I want to add some articulations. As soon as I open the palette, I get a tour specific to the palette, and it tells me that each palette contains elements that can be added. Again, this is probably overly verbose for now, but it gives you the idea of what's possible. And then it tells me how to actually use the palette. Select an element in the score, double-click on the palette element. Now, I bet some of you watching this weren't aware of that, because a lot of people only try to do drag and drop. Drag and drop works, but it's not usually as efficient as selecting a note in the score and double-clicking the palette item, because it's faster to do that than it is to do drag and drop. It's also more accurate, and you can also do multiple things at once. Like, if I select 3 measures, and let's see what makes sense to do that. If I do a line over those 3 measures, then double-clicking the hairpin, the crescendo, will apply it to the whole selection at once. Or if I have multiple notes selected, I could maybe add accents to both of them at once by having them selected. So there's a situation where I think the tour has an opportunity to show people who already are MuseScore users, maybe show them a thing or two they didn't already know. So these tours are designed so that some of them will show up right when you start the program, and other ones show up the first time you use a feature. Joshua was also a Summer of Code student the previous summer, and he implemented the timeline feature, and so he went ahead and put a tour about the timeline. So that the first time you access the timeline from View Timeline, it'll show you this. This is also a new feature that will be in MuseScore 3. It's been around, since last summer, really, but it will be in the released version of MuseScore 3, and it's in the nightly builds if you want to play with it. And the timeline feature basically shows you, well, like it says, it shows you the basic structure of your score. This isn't going to be very useful for this score because there's nothing much in this score. But if your score has like time signature changes and key signature changes and rehearsal marks throughout it, then it will show you some information about those. So for instance, if I go back and load the chord symbol score, look at this timeline, now you can see that there's a rehearsal letter D. And when I click it, it takes me right to rehearsal letter D. And it also shows me that there's a rehearsal letter E. It also shows me there's some double bars within the rehearsal letters. So there's a double bar there. And if there had been any key changes or time signature changes, it would have showed me that. So that's something else that was done as part of Google Summer of Code last year. But you got to see that as soon as I opened this for the first time, a tour showed up to give me some help. So that is going to be the idea with these tours. You get some help right when you start the program. You get more help the first time you try to use some given feature. So our task, my task really, is going to be to design these tours to be just the right amount of information just when you need it. Not to overwhelm you with a lot of annoying dialogues that you just want to, that are so annoying that you just want to never make them show up. Because, that option was there that I think you saw. There was a don't show these again. But then you're really kind of missing out. So I'm hoping that people won't be over anxious and just turn them off. But again, I do intend to add an option to the help menu so that you can reset them and see them again. So that's the basic idea of Google Summer of Code. And we're going to be, we have to apply as an organization to Google to be accepted. And we have applied every year for the last, 6, 7 years. And we were accepted into the program every year but once. For one year, they just, for whatever reason, our application wasn't accepted. But on the assumption that we get accepted this year, that process starts up like in, I think around February, and then somewhere around, a month later is when we find out that we've been accepted as an organization. And then students can look at the page that we put up that will list some possible ideas that we think are good ideas for them. But students aren't limited to the ideas that we suggest. So, we might say, hey, here's a thing that I think would be a neat project for a student to work on. But if a student comes in and says, you know what, I really want to work on this, then they are welcome to work on that. And most of the projects we've had have actually been ones that came from our own ideas page. We're always encouraging people to do their own projects, though, if they seem like they're a good fit. And to be honest, I don't remember which projects we've had that maybe were original ideas versus which were taken from our own ideas page. But even if it's taken from our ideas page, usually the student, puts in their own work to really flesh out the proposal. So yeah, somewhere around the spring is when the students will be looking and developing their proposals. At the same time, they'll be kind of learning about MuseScore, how to use it, and if they're not already users, they'll learn how to build the source code, how to fix bugs, so they can learn the source code well enough to give us confidence that they'll be able to implement what it is they're asking for, that they're proposing. And then somewhere later in the spring is when they submit their proposals, and we choose which ones we would like to accept, and then we send that information on to Google, and they make the final determination of how many how many we actually get, and then which students those are going to be. And then once that is announced, which is late spring, then over the summer the students actually work on the code, and they get feedback from mentors like me and other developers. So it's a wonderful program, and I've really enjoyed being a part of it as a mentor over the years. If anyone who's watching this is a college student, and you're interested in having Google give you a stipend to actually work on MuseScore, I definitely encourage you to check out this program. Or if you know people who are college students, maybe working on a computer science degree, or are programmers, even if they're not actual, I don't think you have to be working on a computer science degree specifically. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you don't. But the rules are all on the Google page. You just do a Google search for Google Summer of Code, and you'll find out everything you need to know about it. So that is what I was going to be showing you, and I'm hoping that seeing the actual features was interesting, and learning more about how this all came to pass. I should also just mention about MuseScore 3, we did just have a second alpha release announced last week. So this was a second alpha release, meaning it's getting close to a beta release. And these terms are not all that well defined, but alpha release means, wow, this thing kind of is starting to shape up, and we want people to start playing with it and give us feedback on it. Beta release means, wow, we think we're actually kind of done adding features, and at this point it's just down to fixing bugs. We've actually fixed all the really huge ones, but we're sure there's more out there, so please download it and test it. That's what a beta release means. And it's been announced that we're aiming for a beta release sometime soon, like this month. But it happens when we think that we've actually reached that point, when we think that we've actually got in everything that we think we want for MuseScore 3, and the major crashes and kind of showstopper issues are fixed. So sometime in the very near future, before the end of the year, you'll be seeing a beta release for MuseScore 3 if all goes well. And then when does MuseScore 3 happen? Well, this happens when we start getting feedback from the beta release, and we fix the bugs that are found. And once we've fixed the bugs that are deemed necessary to fix for a release, then the release happens. So that happens when it happens, but it's shaping up to look really, really good. I mean, yeah, there was that bug with the clefs that we saw there. There's bugs that get found every day, and they get fixed every day. The amount of work that's going into fixing bugs right now is incredible. So my hat's off to all the people who have been involved in bug fixing. because it's really been incredible, as well as implementing new features, because there are new features that keep showing up also. But mostly it's been a lot of bug fixing, and it's really coming together nicely. So I hope people are getting excited about the prospect of seeing MuseScore 3 relatively soon. If you go to the page, the actual YouTube page. Let's see where we got. Oh yeah. By the way, I have to always put in the plug for my online course, because I do. So let me. Oops. There's the link for the course. If I go to the page for my score, this is, the way I see my page is very different from the way you see my page, I'm sure. But if you go to the page on YouTube for me, you will see now that I've gone through and titled all the cafes, so you can see which ones are which. And if you scroll down a little bit, here's the one for MuseScore 3 Alpha. So the MuseScore 3 Alpha was the topic of a cafe, looks like it was just a little over a month ago, and maybe about 2 months ago. And that's when I did kind of a tour of all the new things that were in MuseScore 3 for that alpha release, which was a lot. There's been some new things added since then, and I'll be producing some tutorials and things because we want to have people trying these new features out and testing them and so forth. So anyhow, that's what I have to tell you about. If you got any questions, feel free to ask, and I've answered the questions that I've seen come in. I'm really excited to see these new things coming along and to see the new people that we get every year involved in MuseScore, the development, it's just the group of people that work on developing this software and making it available for free it's just an incredible thing. I'm really proud to have been part of this myself, and just again really excited for what's still to come. So I guess with that I will sign off, and I will see you next week.